So everyone is focused on where the price of Bitcoin will be tomorrow, next week, or even next month. But in this video, I want to take a step back and look at Bitcoin's long-term future with the help of Chamath and his co-hosts on the All In podcast. Recently, they talked about one particularly huge driving force for Bitcoin's adoption, along with how Bitcoin will fare in the future when central bank digital currencies, such as the digital yuan and digital dollar, are the standard. Hi and welcome back. My name is Tom Heavey. I hope you're doing well. Let's get straight into our first clip.
I think that there's a moment here that also is a mile marker on the road towards the state versus crypto, given the actions that were taken
100%.
against Bitcoin wallets, because that seems to be like a big trend that's going to play out over the next decade or two.
There are plenty
inevitably, crypto is the threat to the state, right? And so, you're going to see skirmishes like this that kind of, hey, wallets that donate are illegal and,
Freeberg, this is one of the best points you've made. If you look at what this has done for Bitcoin and you look at what it's done for other cryptocurrencies, this will do more than McDonald's accepting Bitcoin, because this is the first time like a Western democratic state is seizing people's funds like in an incredibly unfair, unnecessary way, which is just going to have more people say, you know what, maybe I should keep some of my net worth out of the government's purview if they're going to seize it anyway. And then now people are going to start looking into the coins that allow people to...
You can't conflate having an enemy with having a different view.
100%.
Those aren't the same thing. Having an enemy is a serious deal, right? Whether that's domestic or international. That's what we had to do in World War I, World War II, and the FLQ crisis. This is just somebody who has a different opinion. I don't agree in mask mandates is what one person says. I want a mask mandate is what the other person says. The idea that you can deplatform one or the other, or fire them from their job, or prevent them from having access to the money that they've earned, or preventing other people from donating money, that's really, it's a really low bar. And I think when you normalize this kind of behavior, it's a very slippery slope. And so if somebody else were to do it, they now have, like it's, again, going back to the Rene Girard sort of philosophical discussion from last week, one of the things about these stoning rituals, right, that Sachs talked about, that we talked about last week. One of the things that Rene Girard talks about is it is always hardest for that first person, right? The first person that throws the stone, right? That's how Jesus was able to diffuse that incident as described in the book of John. But in a different example, the first person that throws a stone all of a sudden normalizes it for everybody else after them. And then these stonings become commonplace or became commonplace. So similarly, it's like if you're a sitting Democratic person who just decides this doesn't work for you, you can't flip the script and basically remove everybody's democratic rights. That's really crazy.
Sachs, you had a closing point you wanted to make?
Well, okay, just on this point about Bitcoin, the reason why Bitcoin is necessary is because the tactics that Trudeau is using is essentially to starve these truckers out, to not only basically arrest them, but he's also taking away their insurance licenses. He's basically preventing them from ever working again. He's talked about that. We're going to give you a criminal record. It's going to make it hard for you to get a job. And then most importantly, on top of that, he's preventing anyone from helping them by contributing to them, by making a donation. So he's essentially starving these guys out. And that's the reason why Bitcoin is potentially helpful, is it allows people using non-custodial wallets to make an end run around that and donate and help these people who are being persecuted, essentially.
I mean, he could have just simply chosen to do what Sachs's favorite president, Obama, did with Occupy Wall Street, which is say, great, you have something you want to voice. Here's where you can do it. Just, no guns, no violence. But how long did Occupy Wall Street last in downtown Wall Street and in Oakland and other places? Like a year or two. And you just wait them out and that's it.
I think when you encounter a sincere protest movement, the first thing you should do as a leader is actually listen and try to understand what it is that they're protesting on behalf of. And Trudeau never did that. He went straight to 11 with this. And I think part of the reason why, Jake, you asked, why is it that there seems to be a common denominator with this and with the Ukraine issue, that the leaders are immediately escalating these situations instead of looking for a way to de-escalate it. And they're doing it with the media egging them on. And so as harsh as Trudeau's rhetoric has been, the media's rhetoric around this has been even worse. You have this CNN contributor, Juliette Kayyem, who's also a Harvard professor, who basically tweeted that Trudeau needed to slash their tires, empty the gas tanks, arrest the drivers, making it unclear how you never get the trucks off the bridge. But then she said, cancel their insurance, suspend their driver's license, prohibit any future regulatory verification. She says, trust me, I will not run out of ways to make this hurt. So you have the media cheering this on, egging on Trudeau. They're doing the same thing, beating the drums of war on Ukraine. What is wrong with these people?
De-escalate, and where's the off-ramp?
I think the biggest story is this this Bitcoin thing, because if you guys think about like pre-1960s, like capital wasn't digitized, it was like physical. Like you had to own like a stock certificate or cash or gold or a bearer bond. Today, everything is digitized, right? Like there's a digital record of who owns what stock and how much is in your bank account, and none of it is tied to your having a physical asset. And ultimately, the law was able to reach into these digital systems and have greater oversight and ultimately control, over accounts and so on. And it's had the digitization of capital assets has had an incredible ability to drive economic growth and investment and ease of transaction. But it's also significantly increased the centralization of assets or the central influence over assets. Bitcoin seems to be the resolution to that. And now you're seeing the ultimate challenge to Bitcoin and the challenge to decentralized systems like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and so on. I don't want to speak specifically to anyone, but there seems to be like this trend line over the last 60 years that's now being challenged, because you could have your accounts frozen any moment, for breaking the law or because emergency acts are induced. And I think you're right. It's probably going to accelerate interest in these kind of off government chain into some separate chain. Anyone can do it.
Anybody can do it.
They're doing it in China, right? And they're
that's the point of the digital yuan. It's the point of it.
The digital yuan is like this incredible.
That's the whole point.
It's like absolute centralization of every capital asset.
Here's where it gets scary.
Think of how dangerous the digital yuan is. The minute you say something that Xi Jinping doesn't like, it's a stroke of a keyboard key, and all your assets
are locked away.
It's a database entry, and you just basically reroute who it belongs to.
Or it could happen in America. They say, you know what, California now wants to have a wealth tax. Anybody who's got money, we're just going to take your money out of your account automatically.
Okay, so the first thing I want to touch on is the slippery slope of when a single person in power can shut down the bank accounts of the people they disagree with. So for a start, this image shows us the freedom of countries around the world. Yellow means that the country has freedom. And remember, this event has taken place in Canada, a country considered free. Green means that the country has partial freedom, and red means the country is led by a dictator. As we can see, huge portions of the world are still controlled by dictators, and dictators are famously keen to shut down anyone they view as a threat. Now, not a threat to the country, but a threat to their leadership. And today, we are moving rapidly towards a future where governments will be able to control the access people have to their money easier than ever before. You see, so many people describe the blockchain, that's the technology underpinning cryptocurrency, as a savior and a route towards decentralization. Now, in many ways, this is spot on. Blockchains are incredible tools for decentralizing. However, a blockchain is just that. A blockchain is a tool, and used in a different way, blockchains can have very different outcomes. So what am I referring to here? I'm talking about central bank digital currencies. So today, while most of our money already exists digitally, the plumbing in the background is still very much the legacy financial system. However, if a government decides to create a new currency, this time built on top of a blockchain, this will be a radically different form of money. Now, to you and I, it may seem very similar to what we're used to. We'll still be using a digital currency, we'll still pay using our cards or phones, we'll still send money to each other in the same way. However, because this currency is built using a blockchain as the base, it has some serious differences. One of the reasons the blockchains work so well for decentralization is because they offer complete visibility to the actions of people on the network. Because we can see what others are doing, it's very hard to cheat the system. After all, if you did try to cheat the system, you'd be instantly seen by everyone. This is the benefit of the visibility. Now, as a result of this, blockchains such as Bitcoin and Ethereum don't need to have a central leader. Instead, they give control of the network to anyone who wishes to take part in the consensus process. So the extremely high visibility offered by a blockchain is what facilitates decentralization. The problem, though, is if a government decides to set up a currency on a blockchain, they will have access to this incredibly high visibility. They will be able to see exactly what their citizens are spending their money on. As they obviously won't allow us to participate in the consensus mechanism, though, the government gets the advantage of visibility into their citizens' actions, how they spend their money, but they don't offer us decentralization. Like I say, a blockchain is just a tool. How you choose to use it is everything. Also, blockchains can be programmable. What does that mean? It means a developer can write a piece of code and it will automatically activate and be carried out without human intervention. Now, this can be amazing. For example, in the case of a decentralized exchange, developers could say if this person deposits enough of X, then they receive the corresponding amount of Y. Developers can use this to create competition for apps like Uber and Airbnb. By taking out that middleman, these savings can be passed on to the consumers, and this is obviously a major win. However, governments can also use this programmability. Now, a dictator may say something like, anyone who sends money to this campaign will lose permanent access to their money. Again, blockchains are just a tool. Programmability is amazing in the right hands, terrible in the wrong. So while many things in the future will be increasingly decentralized, and that will be a huge win for us consumers, there is also the darker side of when certain governments use blockchains to gain even more power over their citizens. We know this isn't just some hypothetical either. The Chinese government is already beginning to implement the digital yuan. The US government has discussed the merits of a digital dollar, and this issue is only going to continue to grow. So many people ask me, why do we need Bitcoin? Depending on the country you're in, the answer might already be obvious today. If you're in Argentina, the inflation rate is out of hand, and the government won't allow you to store more than a low amount of dollars. So clearly, Bitcoin is beneficial for Argentinians. In other countries such as the UK though, the need might seem less obvious today. However, the real question is, will the world need Bitcoin in the future? As we move towards a future with central bank digital currencies, the need for a decentralized currency, which the government can't control, becomes even more important. Now, these are just my thoughts. Now I'm keen to hear yours. What's your long-term plan with crypto? Do you agree with me or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon.